The jungle was alive with strange sounds, deep growls, and the rustle of unseen creatures. Thick trees stood like towers, their roots twisting across the ground like sleeping serpents. The air was heavy, filled with mist and the smell of wet earth. A human named Daniel moved carefully between the roots, his eyes scanning every shadow. Behind him walked an alien girl, tall and graceful, her silver skin glowing faintly under the dim light. She was not used to showing fear, but in this place even her sharp eyes darted nervously from side to side. The jungle was not like anything on Earth. Vines moved as if they were alive. Leaves the size of shields swayed without wind, and sometimes the sound of distant screams carried through the air. Every step forward felt like a step deeper into danger. Daniel kept his knife in hand, ready for whatever came. The alien girl, Lyra, carried a spear with strange glowing marks carved into the shaft. She held it tightly, her knuckles pale. Suddenly, the ground shook under their feet. Birds with razor beaks exploded from the trees, screeching in alarm. Daniel froze. Lyra's ears twitched, her eyes widening as she whispered in a trembling voice, "Something is coming." The words were barely out when a massive shadow moved between the trees. From the thick fog slithered a giant snake, its scales black and green, its eyes glowing like molten gold. The body was thick as a tree trunk, sliding across the ground with a hiss that rattled Daniel's bones. He had heard stories of jungle predators, but nothing had prepared him for this. The snake's head rose high, towering above them. Its tongue flicked out, tasting the air before it let out a low, terrifying hiss. Lyra stepped back, her spear shaking in her hands. Daniel's throat went dry, but he didn't move. The snake's golden eyes locked on them, hungry and cruel. Then, in a blur of speed, it struck. Lyra barely had time to scream before the creature's body wrapped around her. The coils squeezed tight, pressing the air from her lungs. She dropped her spear, clawing at the scales that crushed her chest. Her silver skin began to darken as she struggled to breathe. Daniel's heart pounded. He wanted to rush in, but the snake's body was enormous, its muscles rippling as it squeezed harder. "Lyra!" he shouted, his voice breaking. The alien girl gasped, her eyes wide with panic. The snake's head turned toward Daniel, its mouth opening to show rows of sharp, curved fangs. It hissed again, as if mocking him. Daniel raised his knife, but deep inside he knew his blade was nothing against this monster. Still, he couldn't let Lyra die. He remembered something his father once told him back on Earth. Every beast has a weak spot. You just have to find it. His eyes darted across the snake's body, searching, then he saw it. The underbelly, pale and softer than the scales above. Without thinking, Daniel lunged forward. He rolled under the snake's coils, dirt smearing across his face as he slid toward its stomach. With all his strength, he drove the knife upward into the soft flesh. The snake let out a terrible roar, the sound shaking the jungle. Its coils loosened for just a second, but for Lyra that second meant everything. She coughed, air rushing back into her lungs. "Fight back!" Daniel shouted, his voice echoing. Lyra's eyes blazed with sudden fury. She reached for her fallen spear, her fingers brushing the shaft. With a desperate cry, she grabbed it and thrust it into the snake's side. Glowing marks on the spear lit up, burning through the creature's scales. The snake thrashed violently, smashing trees, tearing the ground apart, but it still refused to let go. Daniel was thrown back, crashing into the roots of a tree. His knife slipped from his hand, but he forced himself to stand. Blood dripped from his forehead, but his eyes never left the fight. Lyra screamed, both in pain and rage, as the snake's coils tightened again. The jungle grew louder, the cries of distant predators, the snapping of branches, the hiss of the giant snake all mixing together into a storm of noise. Daniel's chest ached with helplessness. He had done what he could, but was it enough? Lyra's body was trembling, her strength fading. Her spear glowed brighter, but even that seemed to waver as her breath grew weaker. The snake lifted her higher, its mouth opening wide as if ready to swallow her whole. Daniel stumbled forward, grabbing his knife again, ready to throw himself at the beast even if it meant death. And then, Lyra's eyes changed. For the first time, Daniel saw something deeper in them. A fire, a power she had not shown before. Her lips pulled back in a snarl as she growled through clenched teeth. "Not today!" The snake hissed, tightening its grip, but the girl was not as weak as it thought. Something was about to change. Something the human would never forget. The jungle held its breath. The giant snake's coils squeezed tighter, crushing Lyra's ribs, her face turning pale. Daniel could see the fight in her eyes fading. The jungle roared around them with the sounds of breaking branches and flapping wings as other creatures fled the chaos. For a moment, Daniel feared this was the end for her, but he refused to accept it. He had not crossed half the galaxy just to watch someone die in front of him. Gritting his teeth, he charged forward, ignoring the voice in his head that whispered he was too small, too weak, too fragile against such a beast. His knife gleamed in his hand as he leapt onto the snake's back. The serpent thrashed violently, slamming against trees, but Daniel clung on with all his strength. He dragged his blade along the softer scales near its neck. Blood sprayed dark and hot, coating his hands. The snake hissed in fury, loosening its grip just slightly. That was enough for Lyra to gasp and suck in a small breath of air. Her lungs burned, but that breath lit a fire inside her. She clenched her jaw, her alien strength flickering awake. With trembling hands, she reached down to the coils that held her. Her fingers dug in. Muscles rippled under her silver skin as she tried to push back against the crushing force. Daniel shouted, "Now, Lyra!" "Don't give up." His voice was raw, filled with desperation. For the first time, Lyra looked at him not as a weak outsider, but as someone fighting beside her. His eyes burned with determination, even though he was bleeding and hanging on by sheer willpower. That look gave her the spark she needed. With a guttural scream, she twisted her body. Energy pulsed through her arms, and the snake's grip shifted. She slammed her spear into the ground, using it as leverage, and pushed outward with all her might. The coils loosened just enough for her chest to expand again. She coughed violently, but her spirit had returned. Daniel used the chance to stab deeper into the beast's flesh. The knife sank to the hilt. The snake let out an ear-splitting screech, its body whipping from side to side. Daniel was thrown off, tumbling across the jungle floor. He hit the roots of a massive tree, his vision spinning, but he forced himself to rise. He couldn't stop. Not now. Lyra staggered forward, free from most of the coils but still bruised and gasping. Her hands shook, but she grabbed her spear again. The glowing runes along the shaft flared to life, reacting to her renewed will. The light was so bright it cast eerie shadows across the mist. The snake hissed, its golden eyes narrowing on her. It lunged, mouth wide open, fangs dripping with venom. For a split second, everything slowed. Daniel saw her standing firm, the spear glowing, the beast charging, the jungle holding its breath. Then Lyra struck. Her spear pierced straight into the roof of the serpent's mouth. The glow burst like fire, searing its flesh. The monster convulsed, writhing in agony, slamming its head against trees, tearing apart everything in its path. Daniel ran toward her, pulling her back just before the snake collapsed in a rage-filled thrash. The ground shook as if the whole jungle was trying to throw them off balance. The serpent rolled, coiled, and smashed itself against rocks to dislodge the burning spear. Finally, with a thunderous crash, it retreated into the shadows, leaving a trail of blood and broken trees behind. Silence fell, but it wasn't peace. The jungle was never silent for long. Daniel panted heavily, his chest rising and falling like a hammer. His knife was gone, lost in the chaos. His arms ached, but he turned to Lyra. She leaned on her spear, her body trembling, silver skin bruised where the coils had nearly crushed her. You saved yourself," Daniel said, his voice hoarse. Lyra looked at him, her sharp alien eyes narrowing. "No, you gave me the chance." Her words were soft, almost grudging, as if she did not want to admit it. For a long moment, they stood in the mist, both breathing hard, both realizing they had just survived the impossible. Then the jungle gave a new sound, a deep rumble, far away but heavy, like the growl of something much bigger than the serpent. Daniel frowned, glancing around. "What was that?" Lyra didn't answer. She wiped blood from her mouth and lifted her spear again, her grip tighter this time. Her gaze turned to the trees, where glowing eyes flickered in the distance. Daniel followed her stare and felt his stomach twist. The fight was not over. The jungle was testing them, one predator at a time. But deep inside, he felt a strange rush of energy. They had survived the snake together, and somehow that bond, born in the jaws of death, felt like it was only the beginning. The mist closed in around them again, hiding shadows that waited for their next step. The jungle did not rest after the battle. The mist crept back in, thicker and heavier, curling around the trees like ghostly fingers. Daniel wiped sweat and blood from his brow, his breath still uneven. He wanted to believe it was over, that the giant snake was gone for good, but deep inside he knew better. Lyra leaned against her spear, her ribs aching where the coils had nearly crushed her. Her silver skin bore dark bruises, yet her eyes were sharp again. She stood tall, unwilling to show weakness. Still, her ears twitched at every sound, her instincts screaming that the danger was not finished. The jungle agreed with her. The forest birds had not returned. The insects were silent. Even the restless wind seemed to hold back. Silence in this jungle was never safety, it was warning. Daniel stepped closer. "It's too quiet," he whispered. Before Lyra could answer, the ground quivered. It was faint at first, like the beat of a distant drum. Then it grew louder, heavier, until roots trembled and branches rained down from above. Daniel's stomach turned cold. From the fog, the snake returned, but it was no longer the same. Its body, still bleeding from spear wounds, looked even more terrifying. Blood shimmered against its scales. But instead of slowing it down, the wounds seemed to drive it into madness. Its golden eyes glowed brighter, burning with fury. Each movement shook the earth. It was wounded, yes, but more dangerous than ever. Daniel instinctively reached for his knife, but remembered it was gone, lost in the dirt. His hands curled into fists anyway. Lyra gripped her spear, the runes faint this time, as if her energy had not fully recovered. She bit her lip, knowing the monster wanted revenge, and it would not stop until one of them was dead. The serpent rose high, towering above the trees, and hissed so loud the sound echoed across the jungle. Its tongue flickered as if tasting their fear. Daniel muttered under his breath, "Round 2. The snake lunged, not at Lyra this time, but straight at him. Daniel dove sideways, rolling across the ground as the beast's massive jaws slammed into the soil where he had stood. Dirt exploded upward, roots snapping like bones. He scrambled to his feet, heart racing. "Move!" Lyra shouted, throwing her spear with desperate strength. The glowing weapon streaked through the mist and struck the snake's flank. It pierced, but not deep enough this time. The runes flickered weakly, the light sputtering as if choking. The serpent roared, ripping the spear out with its body and whipping it aside. It flew through the air and lodged into a tree far away, too far for her to retrieve. Lyra froze for half a second, weaponless, but then stood firm. She would not run. The snake turned back to her, opening its mouth, fangs dripping venom thick enough to eat through stone. Daniel grabbed a fallen branch, swinging it wildly to draw the monster's attention. "Over here, you overgrown worm!" The snake's golden eyes snapped to him. For one terrifying moment, Daniel realized it had understood. With shocking speed, the serpent lashed out, its tail whipping across the ground. Daniel was thrown through the air, hitting the base of a tree with a sickening thud. His vision blurred, pain shooting across his back. "Daniel!" Lyra's voice cracked, a rare moment of fear breaking through her strong tone. But Daniel, groaning and barely standing, lifted his head. He would not give up. "I'm fine. Just finish it," he coughed, forcing a grin that was more blood than teeth. The snake moved in for the kill, its coils spreading wide, ready to trap them both this time. Something shifted inside Lyra. She had always believed humans were fragile, weak, only alive because the galaxy pitied them. But here was one, broken, bleeding, weaponless, still standing in front of death without bowing his head. That defiance struck her harder than any weapon. Her eyes glowed faintly, a hidden fire stirring. She spread her arms wide, letting the beast come closer. The snake hissed, confused for a split second before lunging straight at her. At the last moment, she leapt aside, twisting like a flash of silver. Her hand shot out, not for her spear, but for the serpent itself. She caught its neck just below the jaw. Muscles in her arms bulged, tendons straining as she clamped down with an alien grip no human could match. The snake shrieked in rage, thrashing, but Lyra held on. She dug her claws into its softer scales, twisting with all her strength. Her teeth clenched, her whole body trembling, but she did not let go. Daniel staggered to his feet, watching in awe. The alien girl who had nearly died moments ago now held the nightmare by the throat, forcing it down inch by inch. The jungle seemed to hold its breath again. The predator was learning something it had never felt before: fear. The serpent's golden eyes widened as it realized its coils were not the only thing capable of crushing. Lyra growled, her voice raw and fierce. "You thought I was prey." She squeezed harder, her alien muscles rippling. "But I am not prey." The snake's hiss turned into a strangled wheeze. Its body flailed, tearing up the ground. But the more it fought, the tighter her grip became. Daniel, still trembling from pain, could not stop staring. He had thought he was saving her, but now he understood. She was something far more dangerous than she looked, and the jungle itself seemed to whisper in the mist. The predator had chosen the wrong victim. The jungle floor was a mess of crushed roots, broken trees, and smeared blood. The giant snake's tail twitched weakly, knocking over a tree as it fought for breath. Lyra stood over it like a shadow made of fury, her silver arms locked around its thick neck. Her body trembled not from fear, but from holding back her full strength. Daniel had never seen anything like it. She wasn't just an alien girl anymore. She was something fierce, something wild, something that had been hiding behind calm eyes and quiet steps. He leaned on a thick root for support, his body sore and bruised, his heart pounding. Lyra's grip tightened and the serpent gasped, its tongue flicking uselessly. Its massive coils twitched, trying to wrap around her again, but it was too slow now. "Too weak, you came back," Lyra whispered coldly, her voice almost like a hiss. "You should have stayed in the shadows." The snake thrashed once more, throwing its weight to the side, slamming Lyra into the ground. The impact made Daniel flinch. For a second, she was hidden under dust and debris. "Lyra," Daniel shouted, stumbling forward. But before he could take a second step, something moved. The dust cleared and Lyra rose again, slower this time, but still standing. One eye was swollen. Her shoulder bled. But she didn't stop. The snake coiled again, pulling its body back in a spiral, getting ready for a final strike. Its golden eyes were duller now, but still full of hate. And this time, its jaws opened wide. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. This was it. But Lyra wasn't backing down. She bent her knees, breathing deeply once. Her hands reached for the nearby ground. And then, with a sudden growl, she lifted a thick, broken branch, easily twice her size, above her head. Daniel's jaw dropped. "No way." With a cry that echoed through the trees, Lyra charged. The snake struck. Time seemed to freeze. Then came the impact. She slammed the branch into the side of the snake's head with such force that the sound echoed like a gunshot. The snake screamed, a terrible, high-pitched shriek, and fell sideways, crashing into a tree. Bark exploded. Leaves rained down. The jungle groaned. Lyra dropped the branch. Her body shook. Her breathing was ragged. But she didn't stop. She walked up to the dazed serpent, and this time, she climbed on top of its neck, one foot pressing firmly just behind its skull. Daniel watched in stunned silence. The snake's head lifted slightly, confused, broken. Lyra crouched down and whispered something in her native tongue, something soft, almost like a prayer or a warning. Then she pulled her arm back and drove her elbow into the soft spot behind its head. The serpent jerked once, and then it went still. The giant coils loosened. The golden eyes faded. The jungle was silent again. But this time, it was real. Daniel blinked. He stepped forward slowly, carefully, as if the silence might break. "It's dead?" he asked softly. Lyra stepped off the serpent and nodded once. "Yes." Daniel stared at the massive corpse. You crushed it." She looked at him, her expression unreadable. "It crushed me first. I just returned the favor." Daniel smiled, even though it hurt. "Remind me never to make you angry." For a moment, the tension broke. Lyra let out a short breath that might have been a laugh, or just relief. But then her face turned serious again. She looked down at the dead beast. "This was a scout," Daniel frowned. "A scout? For what?" She pointed toward the deeper jungle, where the trees grew closer together and the mist turned darker. "Where there's one, there are more." Daniel's smile faded. Suddenly, the trees ahead shook. Not violently, but unnaturally. It was like something enormous had just passed between them, too big to move without bending the forest around it. Daniel stepped back. "Tell me that wasn't what I think it was." Lyra didn't answer. She turned away from the corpse and picked up her broken spear. The runes on it flickered, dying. She looked at Daniel. "We need to move now." He nodded, limping after her. The pain in his body didn't matter anymore. If the thing they just killed was a scout, then something worse was waiting. As they walked, Daniel glanced at her again. He'd thought he was protecting her, saving her. But the truth was more complicated. She had her own strength he couldn't even understand. But something inside him said, this wasn't just about fighting monsters. It was about what they'd stirred up by coming this deep, and deep in the jungle. Something ancient had now noticed them. The jungle quieted behind them, but neither Lyra nor Daniel felt safe. The body of the serpent lay far back, cooling in the dirt, its blood soaking into the forest floor. But ahead, deeper into the unknown, was where the real danger waited. Daniel limped beside Lyra, his shirt torn, ribs sore, and one arm bruised deep purple. Still, he didn't complain. Not once. Lyra kept glancing at him. There was something strange about this human. He was weaker, slower, untrained. But he didn't stop. He didn't fall behind. She respected that, even if she wouldn't say it out loud. After an hour of silent walking, they reached a rocky slope hidden beneath thick vines. A cave mouth yawned at the base, dark, quiet, and dry. Lyra examined it, then nodded. "We'll rest here. Just for a bit," she said, stepping inside. Daniel collapsed near the wall with a groan. "Just 5 minutes. I think my bones are screaming." Lyra didn't laugh, but the corners of her lips twitched. She sat near him and began to check her bruises. Her ribs still hurt from the snake's grip, and her energy was low. She opened a small pouch on her belt, pulling out a glowing herb and crushing it in her hand. The smell filled the cave, sharp, almost electric. She glanced over at Daniel. His hand was shaking slightly. Not from fear, from pain. "You should wrap your arm," she said. "I would," he replied, "if I had anything left to wrap it with." Without a word, Lyra tore a strip from her own cloak and tossed it to him. He blinked. "Wait, this part of your outfit? Doesn't it mean something in your culture?" "It used to," she muttered. "Now it means you're alive. Use it." Daniel nodded and smiled faintly. "Thanks." As he wrapped his wrist, Lyra finally allowed herself to sit fully against the wall. Her body relaxed just a little, her head leaning back. For a few moments they sat in silence, breathing, resting. Then, Daniel broke the quiet with a question. "So do you always fight like that?" "Like what?" "Like a thunderstorm with teeth." Lyra gave him a flat look. "Is that a human compliment?" "Only the highest kind," Daniel said with a grin. She shook her head, amused despite herself. "You fight strange. No armor, no strength, no strategy. But I don't die easy," Daniel added. "That's what surprises me." He leaned forward slightly, serious now. "You thought I was useless." She didn't answer. "Until I pulled you out of that snake's grip." Still no answer. He sighed. "It's fine. I'd have thought the same thing if our roles were flipped." Lyra looked at him for a moment. Then slowly she reached over and grabbed his forearm. Daniel tensed. Her fingers squeezed hard. Not enough to hurt, but enough to test. Her head tilted as she watched his reaction. He winced but didn't pull away. "You're tougher than you look," she said, half to herself. He raised an eyebrow. "Is this some kind of alien test?" "In my culture," she said softly. "Gripping someone's arm like this is how we judge warriors. If they pull away, they're cowards. If they scream, they're weak. If they fight back..." Daniel flexed his arm just slightly, tightening his muscle under her grip. She blinked. He smirked. "We do a similar thing on Earth. We call it an arm wrestle." Lyra narrowed her eyes. "You challenge me?" "Just to even the score." Without a word, she shifted her body, kneeling in front of him. They locked hands, her long fingers against his calloused ones. The alien girl versus the earthborn man. The cave filled with tension. They began to push. Daniel's face strained as he fought against her strength. She was stronger, he could feel it, but he didn't give up. Lyra's eyes widened slightly, surprised he was lasting more than a few seconds. Then suddenly, crack. Daniel's sleeve tore open, revealing a tightly wrapped coil of cord around his forearm. Lyra paused. "What is that?" He looked down. "Oh, that's my emergency rope. I always keep it close." She leaned in, examining it. "Strange. It looks like a snake." Daniel laughed. "I guess it kind of does." She stared at it a moment longer. Then, without warning, she gripped it tightly and gave it a hard pull. Daniel yelped. "Hey, easy!" "That's my emergency snake." She blinked. "You gave a name to your rope?" "I give names to things that save my life." Lyra let go, her expression unreadable. Then softly she said, "Strange. I thought only our beasts were sacred." Daniel looked up at her. "Sometimes. Humans have their own sacred things, even if it's just a rope or a partner." Their eyes locked for a second. Then came a noise from outside the cave, low, clicking and growing louder. Both of them stood at once, tension back in their muscles. Daniel pulled his snake, the rope, off his arm. Lyra picked up her damaged spear. The moment of peace was over. Outside something was hunting, and this time, it wasn't crawling. It had legs, big ones. The clicking sound outside the cave didn't stop. It grew louder, sharper, like metal claws tapping against stone. Daniel and Lyra stood side by side, their bodies tense. Weapons ready, one holding a glowing, cracked spear, the other clutching a coiled rope and a sharpened stone tied to a stick. "Do you recognize that sound?" Daniel whispered. Lyra nodded slowly. "Crawler. Not a snake. Something worse. How much worse?" She didn't answer right away. Her jaw clenched. "It hunts in packs. Smells blood, smells fear." Daniel exhaled through his nose. "Fantastic." They backed deeper into the cave, keeping their eyes on the mouth. The shadows outside shifted. Then something stepped into the entrance. It was tall, taller than a man, and moved with jagged, insect-like legs. Its body shimmered with plates of armor, dark blue and wet-looking. Two glowing red eyes blinked in the mist. Behind it, more figures appeared, smaller but just as fast. "There's more than one," Daniel muttered. "4, maybe 5, Lyra replied. Her voice was steady, but her grip on the spear was tighter than before. Daniel peeked around for another exit. None. No back door. Just us, one way out, and a bunch of angry bugs. "They're not bugs," she said coldly. "They eat bugs," Daniel gave her a look. "Okay, even better," the lead crawler hissed. Then it crawled sideways along the cave wall, fast. Too fast. Daniel and Lyra moved at the same time. She leapt forward, stabbing her spear toward the creature. The light flared, but the weapon cracked again, the glow fading further. The spear hit the crawler's side, but the armor held strong. Daniel swung his rope like a whip, catching one crawler's leg and pulling hard. The creature tripped, crashing to the ground. But it didn't stay down. It hissed and flipped upright in one smooth motion. They were faster than the snake, faster than either of them expected. "Fall back," Lyra shouted. Daniel stumbled as claws slashed the air in front of him. One caught his shoulder, tearing into his already damaged shirt. Blood welled up, but he didn't scream. He grabbed a burning stick from their small campfire and jammed it into the creature's face. The flame startled it just long enough for Lyra to stab again, this time hitting between the plates under its chin. It dropped. "Dead. One down," Daniel called. But more came through the entrance. The clicking echoed, louder now, bouncing off the cave walls. Lyra looked at him. Her voice was calm but urgent. "If we split them, we survive." Daniel stared at her, confused. "What do you mean?" "I draw them out. You circle behind. Hit their backs. That's where their armor is soft. That's suicide." She looked him in the eye. "Do you trust me?" The cave shook again as the remaining crawlers hissed and moved forward. Daniel nodded. "Yeah, I do." Without another word, Lyra sprinted forward, yelling something in her language. The crawlers turned to chase her. Daniel waited 3 seconds, then ran the other way, hugging the wall, staying in the shadows. His legs burned. His shoulder throbbed, but he didn't stop. He saw one of the crawlers chasing her from behind. He jumped forward and threw the stone-tied rope with all his strength. The stone hit the crawler's leg joint. It tripped, and before it could recover, Daniel leapt onto its back. He grabbed the base of its head and drove the sharp stone down between the plates. It screeched once, then fell silent. Lyra heard it and smiled for the first time in days. The human was learning. She spun and swept her leg into the last crawler, knocking it off balance. Daniel rushed forward and threw the burning stick straight into its face. Lyra followed with a strike to the neck. It collapsed. The cave was quiet again. Both of them stood still, breathing hard, covered in cuts and dirt and sweat. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then Lyra stepped closer to Daniel and said, "You followed the plan." He smiled. "You made it sound like I had a choice." "You had one," she replied. "You trusted me." Daniel looked down at his rope, now soaked in crawler blood. "And you trusted me with your back," Lyra nodded. "That's how warriors bond," he chuckled. "Well, on Earth, we usually use coffee." She looked puzzled. "Coffee? I'll explain later." They sat together again, this time in silence. But the silence wasn't tense. It felt safe, at least for now. Daniel pulled out a small pack from his belt. He opened it, revealing something wrapped in clear material. Lyra tilted her head. "What is that?" "A protein bar," he said. "Human food." He broke it in half and offered her a piece. She sniffed it, then took a small bite. Her eyes widened slightly. "This is sweet," he grinned. "Welcome to Earth culture." She looked at him, softer now. "You are not what I expected." He looked back at her. "Neither are you." The cave outside was dark again. But inside, 2 warriors, one human, one alien, shared a moment of trust between battles, and both knew the jungle wasn't done with them yet. Not even close. The night air inside the cave was cooler now. A quiet wind whispered through the entrance, brushing against their skin like a warning. Daniel and Lyra sat in silence, the half-eaten protein bar between them, its sweetness forgotten. Because the jungle had gone too quiet. No clicks. No howls, no bird cries. Lyra's alien eyes narrowed. The jungle is hiding something. Daniel felt it too. His heart beat slower, deeper. Not from calm. Something primal inside him was alert. Afraid. Not for himself, but for whatever was coming. They stood at the same time. No words needed. Daniel grabbed his rope again, tying the blood-stained stone tighter. Lyra picked up her broken spear. The runes no longer glowed, but she held it anyway. They stepped out of the cave. The jungle greeted them with silence. Thick mist curled around their feet. The moon above was hidden behind low clouds, giving everything a silver-gray glow. The trees stood still, as if waiting. Lyra stepped forward and placed a hand on a tree trunk. Her fingers pressed against the bark. Something huge passed here. Very recently. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Another crawler? She shook her head. Bigger, smarter. Then, they heard it. A low, growling hum like a distant thunder, but coming from beneath the earth. The ground trembled beneath their boots. Trees swayed, not from wind, but from movement. Daniel turned in place, trying to spot it. Where is it? Lyra's eyes searched the treetops. Then her voice dropped into a whisper. Above. Daniel looked up, and there it was. Hanging from the trees. A massive creature with the body of a serpent, the claws of a crawler, and a skull-like head with 3 glowing red eyes. Its body blended with the bark like camouflage, and its long limbs wrapped around several tree trunks at once. It had been watching them. Daniel took a step back. That's not a scout. No, Lyra said. That's the jungle's apex predator. As if hearing its name, the beast dropped from the branches. Its body slammed into the ground with a heavy thud, shaking the forest. Leaves exploded upward. The predator rose to its full height. Taller than both of them. Heavier than the snake. Faster than the crawlers. It roared. A terrible, deafening sound. Not just loud, but low. It hit their chests like a hammer. And then it charged. Daniel barely had time to jump aside. The beast's claw slammed into the spot where he stood, leaving a deep hole in the dirt. Lyra rolled left, striking the side of the predator with her spear. It bounced off, useless. They ran, together. But the jungle was no longer an escape. The trees were too close. The mist was too thick. We can't outrun it, Daniel yelled. We don't run, Lyra said. We trap. Daniel looked confused. With what? We have nothing. Lyra grabbed his arm. We have your snake, Daniel blinked. Then his eyes lit up. The rope, they moved fast. Lyra ran toward the beast, dodging its claws, taunting it. Come then, hunt me, she yelled in her own tongue. The predator roared and chased her. Daniel climbed one of the low trees, wrapping his rope across 2 thick trunks high off the ground. Then he sharpened a thick branch into a spike and tied it to the center of the rope, a swinging trap. Lyra, lead it here, he shouted. She turned, sprinting toward Daniel's tree. The beast followed, eyes locked on her. At the perfect moment, Daniel leapt down, pulling the rope with all his weight. The trap snapped loose, swinging the heavy spike downward with force. Crack! The spike slammed into the creature's throat. It roared in pain, stumbling. Blood, thick and dark, spilled from the wound, but it didn't fall. Daniel's eyes widened. It's still standing? Lyra didn't hesitate. She rushed in, jumping onto its back and jamming her broken spear into the gap where the spike had hit. Daniel followed, climbing its side, and with both hands he pulled the rope tighter around its neck. The predator thrashed, screamed, slammed into trees. But they didn't let go. Together, human and alien, they squeezed, just like the snake had done to them. This time, they were the ones doing the choking. The beast let out one final cry, then dropped. Silence again. Real this time. They rolled off its back, landing on the forest floor, gasping for breath. Daniel lay on his back, staring at the stars above. Please tell me that was the last one. Lyra crawled beside him, her body shaking, but her eyes full of fire. No more sounds. No more smells. I think, yes, that was the final threat. Daniel closed his eyes. Good, because I'm never fighting another jungle monster again. Lyra chuckled softly, a rare sound. You say that now. But humans always walk into danger, he grinned. Only when we have someone worth walking with. She looked at him and for the first time didn't answer with a sharp word or a cold stare. She simply nodded, and in the heart of the deadly jungle the predator was dead. But something new had been born, trust, respect, and maybe something deeper.